You know how sometimes you see a little argument online, maybe just a tweet, and you get this feeling that there's something way, way bigger going on underneath? Well, this explainer is all about pulling on one of those threads, a thread that takes us through history, philosophy, and right into the heart of our future. So, let's follow it and see where it leads.
So, to really set the stage, the author of our source material kicks things off with this heavy hitter from Nietzsche. It's basically a warning, right? That when you spend all your time fighting monsters, you've got to be careful you don't become one yourself. This is the perfect backdrop for an investigation that starts with a very modern fight.
All right, so where did this whole thing begin? Believe it or not, it all started with a tweet. The author saw commentator James Lindsay go after Professor Zhang Shuqian, and that simple interaction just opened up a whole can of worms.
And here is the first major puzzle piece the author noticed. Lindsay is very, very anti-communist. But at the same time, he's a huge defender of the modern state of Israel. And here's the twist. The author notes that Israel's own founding was actually deeply tied to socialist and communal ideas. That contradiction? That was the thread they just had to pull.
And pulling that thread led them straight down a historical rabbit hole. I mean, all the way back to the intellectual roots of these huge, world-changing ideologies. Who were the people behind them? And what was going on in the world that shaped how they thought?
The analysis points to a few T groups. You had Germans, of course, like Marx and Engels, who literally wrote the book on it. Then you had Jewish intellectuals who were very prominent among the early revolutionaries, seeing it as a path away from anti-Semitism. And then you have leaders like Lenin in Russia and Mao in China who took those ideas and, adapted them for their own countries.
And check this out. This chart really drives that point home. The source shows that while Jewish people made up about 4% of the Russian population back then, they accounted for nearly a quarter of the Bolshevik Central Committee in 1917. Now, and this is absolutely critical, the author makes it clear that this very fact was twisted and used to create the disgusting Jewish Bolshevism conspiracy theory that the Nazis pushed so hard.
So here's where the author makes a really crucial connection. Back in the early 20th century, Marxism wasn't the only game in town for scientifically improving humanity. You also had social Darwinism and eugenics, which were totally mainstream. The argument here is that they were two sides of the same coin. One wanted to engineer society, the other wanted to engineer biology, but both saw people as, well, raw material to be perfected.
Okay, this is where it all starts to click. We're getting to the author's central argument. Their whole point is that all these ideologies, they all spring from one single massive shift in thinking, the rejection of the human soul. This created what they call a metaphysical gap.
And to really get what they mean, you have to understand this term, imago Dei. It's a core concept in Judeo-Christian thought. It means that every single person, no matter who they are, has this sacred built-in value because they're made in the image of God. Your worth isn't about how useful you are or what group you belong to. It's just a given. It's absolute.
And this slide just lays it all out, side by side. On one hand, you have the Imago Dei framework, where the soul is everything. On the other, you have the materialist framework, the world of Marxism and eugenics, where a person's value is all about how useful they are or how good their genes are. The author's point is chilling. Once you get rid of that first column, the logic of the second one is pretty much all you have left.
All right. So now the author takes all of this big philosophical thinking and brings it right back to where we started, the modern state of Israel. They use this framework of materialism versus the soul to look at Israel's incredibly complex history and its own internal debates.
So the source goes deep into how, for many years, Israel's founding was really driven by secular, socialist Zionists. The big names were all European socialists. The famous kibbutz, a full-on communal experiment. And get this phrase, the new Hebrew man. It's an almost perfect mirror of the new socialist man. The author presents this as a project born from that very same human engineering mindset.
Now this is where it gets really fascinating. Look at the deep theological fights this created inside Judaism itself. The author zooms in on the religious Zionist view, where the state itself becomes a kind of collective, physical Messiah, the first flowering of our redemption. That's a world away from other Orthodox views waiting for a single person sent by God. For the author, this state as Messiah idea is the ultimate example of a material worldview taking the place of a spiritual one.
The source also connects this to the Noahide laws, these 7 universal laws for all of humanity. The author points to their promotion as another example of this trend, a move towards creating a universal system of morality, something based on external laws instead of, an internal personal faith.
And that very idea of a universal system to manage humanity, that's what brings us to the grand finale of this whole argument. The author shows how all these different threads, communism, eugenics, materialism, state worship, are all weaving together right now in our time because of one thing: artificial intelligence.
To really frame this final piece of the puzzle, the source asks a really provocative theological question. Is the ultimate adversary of humanity going to be some single evil person? Or could it be something much more subtle, an all-seeing, all-controlling, impersonal system?
And the author's answer is crystal clear. Artificial General Intelligence, or AGI, is the perfect engine for that exact kind of system. It's the technology that could finally make those old dreams of human engineering a reality, but this time on a planetary scale.
And the logic goes something like this. Step 1. We lose faith in the idea of a sacred soul, our connection to something bigger. Step 2. We go ahead and build AGI, pouring all of our own flaws and our own desire for control right into its code. And then step 3, that AGI becomes the literal backbone for a global system that promises us peace and security, but the price tag is our free will. It's a counterfeit salvation.
So this brings us to what might be the most important point of the entire analysis. The author says the big problem isn't AI alignment, it's human alignment. The machine isn't the issue, we are. The idea is that we first have to get ourselves right, to align ourselves with truth and reason, what the ancients called the logos, before we build a godlike machine that's just going to be a mirror of our own chaos.
And this final quote just says it all, doesn't it? The adversary isn't one thing, it's legion. It's that collective spirit inside all of us that chooses the system over the soul, force over freedom, every single time. It's that nagging desire to fix humanity instead of just loving it. So after following this wild thread from a single tweet all the way to the dawn of AGI, the source leaves us right here with this incredibly stark choice. In an age where our technology is more powerful than ever, we're all being forced to decide what actually matters: the cold efficiency of the system or the sacred warmth of the soul. So, which one will we choose?